who asks us this. We all know that Thomas Tuchel, as England boss, is going to be box office. But should we really be prioritising that over a calmer strategy designed to win England tournaments? Do you think that the appointment will be worth it for the entertainment value it provides? Yes, Jim. Presumably, if it was an Englishman, it would be calmer. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Joe might be getting a little carried away about the kind of the more erratic elements of Thomas Tuchel's personality. We know that he can be a little bit chaotic at times in terms of handshakes, off the top of my head.
Yes.
But I don't think that's necessarily going to translate onto the pitch, is it? I don't expect this to be a sort of turbulent time in terms of the way England play.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason they brought Thomas Tuchel in is that he is a very sort of tactically elastic manager who can adapt to things very, very well because he understands a lot of different modes of play. And I think that's exactly what England need in tournament football, and that is why it's essentially the best fit of those available.
You don't worry about bust-ups and, if we assume they'll qualify for the World Cup, it'll all go wrong and there'll be fallings out. I mean, we know he's got a good relationship with Harry Kane, for example.
Yeah, he does.
And if indeed he does decide to bring Eric Dyer back into the fold, so there's 1.5, Andy.
Lars suggested on the continent on Thursday that maybe the advantage of having Thomas Tuchel in international management is he's not around the players and the people who are in charge long enough to fall out with them.
Yes, that
is one way of looking at it.
And we've had a lot of questions about Thomas Tuchel, by the way.
Yeah.
You might be thinking, "Come on, it's Premier League time." Well, no, this is
what people want to know.
People are still fascinated by it.
Well, of course.
It's
a new England manager appointment, having had Southgate for a long time, so that's kind of interesting in of itself. But going for a foreign manager when people thought, "Oh, right, we've got our strategy in place," so a lot of questions, and this is why we're tackling this one.
Yeah, and I think going back to Joe's question, I don't think the two things are mutually exclusive. It can be box office and it can be a strategy to win England a tournament. I think Jim's absolutely bang on. The fact is,
Thanks, mate. People never say that.
but that's the point, isn't it? And you touched on it as well, Marcus, on Wednesday's Ramble. The fact that there's this unspoken pressure because there's the feeling that you just have to win something with this set of players. Now, I think that is sort of accentuated by the way that the Euros went. And you look at the other potential rivals to England and you think, hang on, the next World Cup, especially depending where Argentina are with Messi, the fact that Brazil aren't really any good at the moment, it's kind of there for the taking is perhaps like going too far.
There's no doubt there's a chance.
Like if France stay with, I said on OTC this week, if France stick with Didier Deschamps, they are not winning the World Cup. I can just tell you that now. They are not winning the World Cup. So there's an opportunity there. And if Tuchel can apply what he did in that first 6-8 months at Chelsea to England are laughing. There's no doubt about
laughing
that.
all the way to the podium, Andy.
Exactly, and amongst the ticker tape.
I would say to people, start celebrating now.
Yeah, exactly. But I think when we're talking about the entertainment value, it is the other stuff. Now, you saw, I think, probably a relatively calm Tuchel in England, but if I was trying to describe his time at Bayern, and bear in mind he was in charge of Bayern for, and that's the most recent frame of reference we have, for just over a year, it felt like about 10 years because so much happened. There are so many different eras of the Thomas Tuchel era, and there's the crazy stuff that he said in press conferences and on touchlines. There's the fact that they probably could have sacked him on about 4 different occasions, but they were in a bit of a mess upstairs, so they didn't. Now, some of the problems they had and some of the reasons they didn't win stuff was due to inherited problems. So I think tactically, I still feel pretty good about him.
And they should have won the Champions League that year, in context. They could. I say should have. They really could have done. I mentioned this the other day.
Could have, and that I think is quite applicable because, of course, England will be trying to win a cup competition. So I think that's really applicable. But I think as well the ultra scrutiny of the Bayern job is also quite comparable to the ultra scrutiny of the England job. And like the stuff he says and the stuff that he said in press conferences when he was out at Bayern, I sat through a few of them. And you're like, I cannot believe that he's saying this stuff out loud. But
do you not think though
that sort of stuff?
But do you not think though,
even
Andy,
one of those lines is like a massive story that sticks with you for months for England?
But do you not think though, back in his home country of Germany, you know what it's like? You get home, you let your hair down. Your family see the worst of you. He said himself that he thought that he was more appreciated in England.
Right.
And at Chelsea, in that very tricky, because whatever was going on at Bayern, it wasn't as tricky as it was at Chelsea. He handled himself quite superbly at Chelsea. Now you see,
but I still lost the thread a bit on the pitch in the last 6 months.
Yeah, that's a different thing, but okay.
Yeah.
I think that he knows, like you can't be that ridiculous. He knows that he's managing England. He knows what the history of the two countries. He knows that he's going to get some jingoistic bollocks. He's already got it, and that's probably not going to go away. He will have to win the World Cup really to shut everybody up. Because even if they do really, really well, we failed in the end. The contract is only 18 months.
Yeah, well, this is what. That's made me wonder as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a sensible length of contract to sign, isn't it? To see if it works and see if he likes international management and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know, the idea that this could be one and done is in itself quite exciting as well, because it feels like you're going to get all of the Tuchel distilled into this one tournament campaign.
Yeah.
Which might be. It might be that it burns out and it's just untenable after the World Cup.
Doesn't even qualify.
But if you've won the World Cup, great. I mean, I still cannot ever bring myself to think
in the heat of North America.
So,
but that his pragmatism with regards to the tactics, because if it was, say, Lee Carsley, we know he likes to play a certain style. I think that pragmatism is going to be enormously important, playing in the humidity and all that of where it's going to happen.
Actually, I'm about to contradict what you're saying here, or certainly, you may have. Provided the evidence as to why what I'm about to say might not actually transpire. But I think we're all kind of intrigued to see how England might function as a possession-based team, regardless of who they play. Like if they play Argentina or Brazil or France and go, you know what, we're having all of the ball, let's go for it. We're all intrigued to see if it's possible for England to do that, because we look at the players and think a lot of them play in clubs like that. They're used to it. This finally feels like a generation of players who could do that. Do you think, Andy, that Thomas Tuchel is the man to do that? Do you think he'll approach it like that, or will we kind of see more of the pragmatism that England are essentially known for?
But I think pragmatism means something different with him, and that means adapting to the situation, even during a game. Like you can see his teams, and you saw it at Dortmund as well, press hard and then sit off. And I think to be able to manage in-match situations is the most appealing thing about Tuchel, because that was the main thing that Southgate was criticised
Heavily criticised for that.
Even if he changed the culture and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's really important, by the way. If Tuchel can at least retain enough decent relationship with the media that, everything that Southgate did about the feeling that he created around England, to retain that is quite important. But in terms of the coaching, there were points last season where Bayern had all of the ball and absolutely put opposition under siege, and there was the time where they absolutely whacked Stuttgart at home and only had 40% of the ball. So I think his philosophy adapts to the situation. It's a philosophy that is quite sort of chameleon-ish.
So I think we've looked a lot of the second half or part of that question. Do you think the appointment will be worth it for the entertainment value it provides? I think we probably think it will. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, is Joe talking about the off-pitch entertainment?
Well, he might be.
Because by the way, you talked about that. He will not be able to stop himself saying mad stuff.
Yeah. Fine. So
he won't be.
Well, we sort of look forward to that a bit. But the first part of the question is, should we really be prioritising that over, as Joe puts it, a calmer strategy designed to win England tournaments? Well, is there almost a contradiction in that, Jim? Because we're talking about a calmer strategy designed to win England tournaments, in that, promote from within, all that kind of stuff. But to win England tournaments, surely the FA have looked at this and thought, that's why we've given him an 18-month contract. And also, if Tuchel comes in, I truly believe, and I really hope that this belief can be tested, that if a manager does win England a tournament, I think it has the potential, and people are going to laugh at me here, to actually calm us down a little bit.
Oh, we need it so badly.
Yeah, and I know the other nations around us don't need it and they're enjoying it, but that aside, we're not focused on them. I think it will come to, and I think it would be easier for another manager. I understand England would have the tag of world champions, but
a rationality that's not maybe there now.
It's not like, you got to win a tournament. Okay, let's see this kind of development. And I think that's probably the FA's thinking, which is why they've gone for, rather than promoting within the best man for the job, they see it.
You think you think the FA want England to win the World Cup, so we'll all shut up?
That's a fascinating way of interpreting what I've said. But before we move on, any thoughts on that part of the question?
Now, I suppose there is a way of taking that question or that element of the question and looking at Gareth Southgate's approach, which was absolutely designed in a meticulous way, looking at how previous tournament winners have done it and looking at the pragmatism employed by even sides we consider to be absolutely dazzling, like sort of Spain in 2010. And we tried that, and it didn't quite work. So I think there will always be an element of calm strategy in the FA's approach from now on. I think that will be a legacy of Southgate that we'll have for a long, long time. But to be honest, I don't necessarily think that Thomas Tuchel is at odds with that as a strategy.
Well, there we are. I hope that answers your question, Joe. It's going to be fascinating, though, when he starts on the 1st of January. I love that. Give him the 2nd of January. No, let's really test him.
Yeah.
Let's see how much he wants this.
Imagine he turns up and he's just hanging. It's like, we've made a terrible mistake. Have you been to bed?
Jim, you've got the next question.
I sure do. It's from Matt on, and you're going to like this, X. With Gareth Southgate being praised for his man management skills with England and being criticised for his tactical approach, do you think there's room in today's game for a two-person leadership team with one manager focused on man management and the other focused on the tactics?
It's funny, the way Matt's put it immediately makes me think of Roy Evans and Gerard Houllier.
That's the last one, isn't it?
Or for the really one for the heads, Steve Gritt and Alan Kirbishley.
But these are the last
in the 90s as well.
Yeah,
the last sort of genuine co-managers. I mean, we can talk about other teams than England, but obviously he's mentioned Gareth Southgate there. But really, was that not more of the approach that they had under Southgate? That Holland was doing he was given the job of doing a lot of the.
It's quite common, isn't it?
Yeah.
You look at PSG when they were really successful under Laurent Blanc. That was because Jean-Louis Gasset was doing the tactics, and when Gasset wasn't there, hey presto, Blanc wasn't that good at tactics, and it really
Andy,
showed.
Talk to me about Howe and Tyndall.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Who's doing what there?
I mean,
Tyndall's tackling the handshakes.
Yeah, Jason Tyndall is doing the people management side.
Well, that
isn't
seems like a really good example of this, isn't it? Where like Eddie Howe's essentially telling you what you need to do tactically at the weekend, and then Jason Tyndall's noticing that you've done something different with your hair.
I thought you were going to say
good.
Howe's telling you what to do at the weekend, but Tyndall's telling you to do of an evening. What to do
in PM. Yeah, very much. So I think this does already exist, essentially, isn't it? I mean, even the greats have had kind of right-hand men who've been tactically really important. You think of Carlos Queiroz with Sir Alex Ferguson. One of the all-time greats had somebody there bringing different elements to it. So
Brian Clough and Peter Taylor.
Well, Steve McLaren was one.
Harry and Jim.
There you go. But Steve McLaren was one who was, quite good at talking to the players and getting alongside them. I mean, you're right, though. I mean, back to England, I mean, when Roy Hodgson was in charge, it was Roy and Ray, of course. And one of the reasons why they got Gary Neville in was so they had someone who was a bit young, because Roy and Ray are obviously of age, get Gary Neville in, who could maybe be a little bit more of a liaison between them and the players.
And these things are important, aren't they? You think of Conor Cody going to the World Cup, essentially because everyone really liked him and he was brilliant to have in the dressing room and was, he'd only play if there was essentially an emergency. Micah Richards essentially got a contract extension at Aston Villa because he was so good in the dressing room. Like, it's easy to look at appointments like that and be a bit cynical about it, but clubs keep doing it and national team setups do it for a good reason.
Oh, it's more of a thing now, isn't it? Yeah. So you have Jay Spearing at Liverpool, you had Tom Huddleston at Manchester United, that idea of a senior pro who guides the,
this is slightly different. You're talking about playing, this is very much talking about...
This is different, but that idea of not just tactical instruction, but someone who's tasked specifically with a pastoral role.
So really,
that's what Matt's talking about.
So when says, do you think there's room in today's game for a two-person leadership team with one focused on one focused on the other? We're saying it kind of is done, but officially, I don't think you are going to have, we've got co-managers. I think you officially will always have...
There has to be one figurehead.
This person is the manager or the head coach.
It's just not clear leadership, is it? Because you get a situation where if, I understand that in the LinkedInification of the world, essentially, it does feel like this kind of thing could possibly make a comeback, but clear leadership is important. So what if you've got, you've got your two managers, but they disagree?
Yeah.
What happens then? What if one of them isn't quite working out? Do you sack Ant and keep Deck? Like I don't think it's very practical.
But that's the thing. It ultimately always ends up as that.
Yeah.
Whether it's Grit and Kerbishley or Evans and Houllier, eventually the choice is made at a point.
So Evans and Houllier was a really interesting one. I think it's worth making the point here that Roy Evans was the incumbent, wasn't he? Gerard Houllier came in alongside him, but there's a way of thinking which was that Roy Evans was essentially the last link to Shankly's Liverpool at the club, even that far ahead in the 90s.
I mean, a proper Liverpool football club through and through.
Absolutely. So I think it was quite an emotional decision to try that out. And Evans left of his own accord in the November of that season in '98. So it's a bit of an anomaly, that one.
Oh, it is. And hence we say that is like the last example, and we're going back over 25 years in this country, we should say. So, yeah, I think you're always going to have that person on point. Good question, though. Nice to chat about Evans and Houllier.
Oh, isn't it? We've got one here from Hendrix is God on the Discord. Lovely to have one from the Discord. What event in football history do you wish social media existed for? I personally think the Twitter meltdown in 2001 by Spurs fans when Wenger walked out from behind that screen with Sol Campbell next to him would have been hilarious. You're not wrong there.
Yeah, the story about that, I don't know how true this is, but I remember a friend of mine told me that, because he remembers it a lot more clearly, that apparently there weren't that many people at the press conference because the press knew that Arsenal had signed Richard Wright, the goalkeeper, and just assumed it was going to be an announcement for that. And then none of them were expecting Sol Campbell to walk out. It must have been absolutely unbelievable. I do remember the day everyone was like, what? Yeah. It wasn't like, have you heard they're going to sign Sol Campbell? It was like, we have signed Sol Campbell in a way that just doesn't happen now. Yeah. It would have been absolutely astonishing. I think, it's that would have been incredible. Simeone and Beckham would have been absolutely unreal. Could you imagine? Like, the internet would have exploded.
Yeah, but I'm glad.
The internet wouldn't have been able to handle that at the time.
I think I'm glad that those things, that I have those memories of certain things where I don't have all the crap on social media.
Can I raise you a Diana Ross?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yeah.
That would have been instant memes.
Yeah.
It would have been absolutely brilliant. If you're not aware of what I'm talking about, firstly, shame on you. Unless you're young and have no reason.
No, shame on them, Jim.
So in the 1994 World Cup, in the opening ceremony, Diana Ross performed a song, and at the kind of culmination of that song, she was supposed to essentially take a penalty, just kick it into an empty net, essentially, but she skewed it wide, not unreasonably. She's not a footballer, and then the goal just sort of split in half anyway, as it was meant to when she was meant to score.
Exactly,
and it was it's the worst penalty of all time, even in that World Cup.
Yeah.
Shouldn't really have mistaken Diana Ross for Jurg Alberts, really.
No, it's a silly mistake to make.
I'm surprised you meant it. Was he? He wasn't in the Germany squad, was he?
No, but the whole point is it's a net buster. That's what it's meant to look like when the goal goes in two separate bits.
But I think just a Panenka would have done it with that net, Andy. And she put it wide.
Don't overload Diana Ross with too much information before a shootout, mate.
What about Panenka's penalty? Imagine if social media existed for when
someone invented a new move.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That
the Cruyff turn.
There's a few there.
The first time Ronaldinho did the Elastico. I mean, that was 2003, 2004. So the first time that he did it for Barcelona.
All right.
So, yeah.
He didn't invent it, though.
I didn't say he invented it. I said the first time Ronaldinho did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andy, just be careful. They do VAR checks in this.
Yeah. The one for me, I think, if you think back to the film on Diego Maradona by Asif Kapadia,
brilliant movie. That.
It's incredible, and that opening scene where they're flying through the streets of Naples in the car, which is really representative of what a taxi drive in Naples is like.
So there's only one way to get around Naples, and it is to fly.
Yeah, but with the higher octane sort of 80s music that's like something out of Carlito's Way. You think of that and how gripping it is. Imagine, if everyone had have camera phones and posted their own pictures and films of it up, and also, like, how many more people would have been there as well? I'm not sure that it could have been many more people because obviously the San Paulo as was then was absolutely packed out. But I just think as well. I mean, I know from like watching this own film with my kids, for example, that there are certain players that are iconic for children now. And you wouldn't expect Maradona to be one of them because it's sort of pre-HD television, really. But he's so iconic. Like my children are absolutely like captivated by him. I mean, Maradona's was more than the greatest player in the world. He was someone with a like true superstar aura.
Proper rock star.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you can imagine a moment like that, and also him signing for Napoli, like what the fuck?
Yeah.
Do you not think, though, Andy, that the fact that there wasn't social media around that time makes these images more special, makes them more sacred, because you don't have it at every possible angle. The footage is not as HD as you said, and that's why we're enthralled by it, and it leaves room for mystique and mystery.
You could argue that, but
I will.
I don't think I don't think that really defines the appeal of Maradona. And the fact is, this was something that was incredible that we've only recently, because of this film, had a little glimpse into. And I don't know about you, but I had the feeling watching that of I would love to see more of that.
Yeah, for me, that's it. That's like going around, ruins in, some historical site. Too many glimpses spoils the broth. Right then, Jim, next question from you.
The next question is indeed from me. It's from Alex on Instagram. Is the Conte versus Tuchel handshake the most iconic manager dispute moment ever? I'm immediately going to say no.
It's a good one.
A bit of recency bias there, but it is a good one.
Yeah,
if we be fair to Alex here and sort of narrow it down to very specific touchline disputes.
Yes,
actually, there aren't that many really to go off of.
So, which is why it's not unfair. I think when you first read that question, you think, what, managers sort of slagging each off? No, you're talking about a kind of
an actual flashpoint.
Yes, exactly.
Rather than a lasting grudge.
Which means it's up there, and I think with as time moves on, I think this will be very much talked about, and this is what prompted Graham Souness to say, "We've got our game back."
Yeah, he did say that, didn't he?
He did.
It's also an absolute masterstroke in antagonism from Thomas Tuchel, because we know that Conte is a combustible fellow, but he's shaking his hand. He's done the decent thing. It's like, what happens if I just don't let go? And bang! Immediately, Mount Conte erupts. Like you don't even have to wait half a second to find out what happens.
Yeah, it just lingered too long, and he dragged it into an angle which you don't normally get dragged it in a handshake.
What's the more awkward version of that will happen in the 2026 World Cup final between Tuchel and Nagelsmann? Oh. That's the question, really, isn't it?
I'll bite your hand off for that.
No, you'll pull my hand off for that. I think what's the better version, in my view, of Conte versus Tuchel, even though it's excellent, is Pardew versus Wenger.
Yeah, I thought that.
Upton Park.
Yep.
That's the one. Because what I love so much about that is like Alan Pardew getting up and thinking, right, you're French and I'm a proper geezer. And then he gets right up to it and he's like, geez, you're massive.
Keeps going. It's like when you stand under the shard. Dizzy.
And Wenger gives him a proper push.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he also doesn't shake his hand at the end in a really, really petty way.
Yeah.
Where, Wenger doesn't come out of it very well.
He does. He comes out of it as low-key hard.
Pardew maybe should come out of it as the bigger man, but he's Alan Pardew, so he doesn't.
Jim Pardew Pellegrini?
Oh, that's the one for me. That's the best one.
What did he say?
So, if anyone's unfamiliar with this by now, Ramble trope, Man City are playing Newcastle. Manuel Pellegrini is in the dugout. Alan Pardew's in the other dugout. They have some sort of disagreement about something, and Pardew turns around, and I'll stop here because it's a thing people say about arguments, isn't it? Oh, I turned round and I said. He physically turns round and he says to Pellegrini, "Shut your noise, you f***ing old." What a thing to say to another human being, even in the heat of the moment.
It's superb.
There was also a really good one between Roberto Mancini and David Moyes in 2010. Where David Moyes catches the ball. This will be when he's at Everton. Mancini barges into him, grabs it and runs off to sort of start the play again. And then
I've forgotten that.
Moyes, in the footage, you only see him from behind. He sort of approaches Mancini at a pace that's best described as Scottish. So it's like he actually starts to look a bit like Duncan Ferguson from behind. You know how all Scottish people have the ability to remember they're Scottish and just like power up.
Yeah,
and that's what happens. And he's sort of like it's amazing. It's Begbie-esque, and they're both sent off.
Last one from me: Nuno Espirito Santo and Neil Warnock.
Ooh,
okay.
when Wolves, when Santa was in charge of Wolves,
Yes.
and they were flying in the Championship, and obviously was in charge of Wolves. And after the game, he was celebrated, and Warnock obviously went over to shake his hand to just get that out of the way, presumably. But I think he was celebrating or whatever it was. He didn't do the handshake straight away because his focus or attention was elsewhere. And Warnock got thoroughly pissed off at this, and he did that thing where people think I've done the gentlemanly, good sporting thing. He's rejected me. Now I have absolutely carte blanche to just be the massive, most biggest bellend in the world. But it's all right because I've got all the credit in the bank.
I've got the high ground.
Yes, exactly. And I cannot relinquish this high ground in any way. So Nuno then went over to him to basically say, oh, sorry. And as he's shaking his hand, Warnock pulls his hand away and he's going, fuck off, fuck off, like this.
That was fun.
That's super.
Oh, Neil.
Oh, dear. Final question on this edition of the Mailbag from Jack on email. After the World Conquer Championships was thrown into turmoil amid a cheating scandal, there was an 82-year-old man who beat his competition by allegedly using a steel conker. That's the story there.
It was found on him. He claims he just had it for humour value.
He does, yes. So he had a steel conker. Some saying he used it to win the World Championship. He's saying he didn't. But anyway, what is the one rule in football you think you could break and not be caught for?
Well, I think the obvious one's throw-ins. People do it all the bloody time.
Yes.
I think referees have got past the point where they're going to pull it up now.
Well, Jim, you've often said that just if you're going to have a throw-in, so not a kick-in, and I think kick-ins would be a bit silly to bring in an 11-a-side football. If you're going to have a throw, they should just be able to just chuck it, like in whatever way, one arm, two arms, legs, one leg up, two legs, whatever, just all in.
Do they not have it to stop people like launching it like a goalkeeper or a shot putter?
Probably,
because it might make for essentially just more massive long ball football. I don't know why they don't have it.
I think the thing is, if you're at the side of the pitch and trying to throw it in with one arm, it's going to be really inaccurate.
Okay, so I think for me, it's like as long as you've got two hands on the ball, fill your boots.
Something I think I could get away with. Do you know when players are taking a corner and they put the ball so that the actual bottom of the ball is not touching the line, but the curve of it is over it, and it looks like it's not quite right? I reckon I could sneak a little bit of extra room. I reckon I could get away with that. Yeah. Not all the time.
I suppose the other corner
I'd try it every time and I'd get away with it once or twice.
I suppose the other corner thing is where a player sort of puts his studs on the ball and then lets one of his teammates dribble it, which referees seem to be a lot more vigilant about now.
Because the ball's got to move the sort of the circumference of the ball, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I think I could flout some financial rules.
Yeah.
Just so I know I want. Get a load of really, really good lawyers and never be caught.
Yeah.
Really?
I believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
Could never happen. Could never happen.
There are some people I could take inspiration from that. But I won't name them, Andy. Thank you very much for your questions, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure answering them, as always, on this thing we call the Football Ramble Mailbag, part of the Acast Creator Network. And do get your questions in for next week's episode. You can follow us on Twitter, currently known as X, TikTok and Instagram at Football Ramble, and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your pods. Thanks, And.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, everybody. See you on Monday.
Thank you for watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an upload. A single upload. Don't miss out on the uploads. The uploads are important.